So where we left off in the last one was at this wall piece here. We just made this beveled corner by joining a straight like this with two corner pieces. And there was a bit of cutting involved, but the UVs were pretty much like we didn't have to do any work on them, which is always nice. So for this one, what we're going to do actually is I want to turn this one here into like a main entrance. So I'll give it like a set of double doors, and maybe these flat facing pieces I'll add like a curved window into them, just to kind of make it stand out a bit from the other segments that we have here. Before I do that though, I need to give this one as well the crown, the molding that runs along the top. So to do that, I want top and bottom, so I'm just going to borrow this piece here. I'm just going to Shift D and copy that, and I'll move it into place, and I'll Shift D again and bring him to this side and rotate him into place then. So turn him 90 degrees and snap him backwards. Now for the front here, what I'll do is I'll take this piece that I have. You might not have got that. I think before I pressed record, I just copied that over. It's just a window piece here. You can take them either. I'll just grab these guys and make a duplicate. And here I'll snap them to place here. And now I need to rotate them. 45. And now if I go into top-down view, I can ease them back. Okay, so we have a slight issue here, being that for me to cut this way and join the verts, this needs to be longer. This has to be intersecting here. So what I could do is actually I'll just go to scale, and I want to make sure that my scale tool here is set in orientation mode, set it to local, so it'll scale along the axis that you want. And I'm just going to scale it on the X here until it joins at that point there, because we're going to cut through that. So with that, I can just select these two guys here. I want to keep this as the main because it's got the pivot point centered here. So I will select the two smaller pieces first, then the large one that I just scaled, and Control J, and they will inherit that pivot then. So now we just need to cut these. And we'll cut these by doing the same thing we done with the wall. I'm basically just going to copy, go to edge select here. I'll just copy this ring of edges and this ring here. Shift D, E to separate. Now I'll just try to select those edges there and the crowning, and I'll isolate them. So the problem that we're facing here now is these aren't big enough. So they're not coming out past the piece of geometry that we need to cut. And we can't just kind of do this manually because it's too hard to get a judge on that. So what we could do is just scale these up in their place so that they'll eventually encompass everything that we want to have cut here. We can't just scale these as they are though, because they'll scale up and out, which is not what we want. So what I'll need to do here would be, I'm just going to select this set of edges and I'll separate that by selection. So now both our edges are separated. They're not joined anymore. So now when I right click, I can say set origin to geometry. And that'll set the pivot point into the center of those pieces. So now if I go up here to my pivot point options and set this to individual origins, when I now scale it, it'll scale up from its own center of mass, which is what we want. So once we have that scaled properly, we'll just rejoin them, Control J, and now I can select my geometry. I'll go into edit mode, select everything, and control and select the cutter. So I'll go into top down, and I can go to mesh, knife project. Just make sure cut through is turned on there. And we can now then just grab the large quantities of polys that we want to keep. Control I to invert that, X, and delete faces. So there's our molding sorted. I was going to remove those cutters. There we go. So I'll just quickly test, make sure this snaps. Yeah, that looks pretty spot on. Right, so now I just want to make a copy of this. Control D, and I'll pull him backwards because I want one piece that doesn't have the molding on it. So I'll remove this. So now what I'm going to do is I want to cut the double doors into this blank piece here. So to do that, I need a door. I'm just going to grab him. I'll borrow this one, Control D to duplicate, and I'll just pull him forward. And you can see I've actually got a kind of dotted line here, so that means this is parented to the wall, which I don't want. So to clear that parent, I just need to select the door, go to Object, down to Parent, and clear and keep transformation. That will then give us the door by itself. So this has to be a double. So what I'm going to do is I'll isolate it, go to Front Orthographic. Now I can select it, and I'll just duplicate over a copy. Now I'll need to turn snap off for this, and I'll zoom in, and it's going to move them closer. I want them almost touching, but not quite touching. So something like that is fine. And I know that this, it's set up to behave like a door, and so is this, but we actually need that pivot point on the other side. And I'll deal with that in a second. There's no point doing that now because I'm going to be joining these to the frame and it's going to lose its pivot information anyway. So I'll worry about that in a bit. First I will finish getting the doors together by borrowing the frame. So I'm just going to select these geometries, Shift D, B to separate. Now I'll just turn on snap and move him forward as well. Okay, so he's not quite lining up in the center, so I'll do this manually. I'll select my doors and the frame, isolate, and go front orthographic. Now I'll just kind of line this frame up so that the pivot point is between these two doors. There we go. Now with that, I'll select the frame, go to edit mode, and Control R to cut a line down between them so I can remove half. I'm going to give this a mirror. So I'll remove half of it, delete faces. Now I will give it a modifier, add a mirror. Now I'll get to edit mode, polygons, select everything, and go front orthographic again. And I'm just going to pull this to the side and let the mirror do the work on the far side of it. So I just want to move it to the point where there's a slight gap in the door. Now I think I need to move the top a little as well. There, we go with that. So now we just need to join those back in the center. So I will select the edges, the right edges, there we go, and I'll move them. Now you can see here I'm kind of cutting into them. They're kind of overlapping, which I don't want. So in my modifier to stop that, I just want to turn on clipping here. That will stop the vertices actually intersecting with each other, so I can move this as much as I want, but that center line will always stay centered. So once that's set up, I'll come out of edit mode and I will apply. So we're going to keep that line down the middle here. It's actually important for us to line this up with the beveled wall, because this is a little less straightforward than this door was, or the windows. Because with these, what we were doing basically was just going into like an orthographic, so a front orthographic or a side orthographic or whatever it was, and we were just kind of knife projecting that hole in. But that won't work here with this door. Well, this wall I should say, because we can't actually get to that. If we go front orthographic, we're getting this kind of flat face part here, or we go side orthographic, we're getting the other flat face. We can't get an orthographic view of this angle. So in order to cut this, we're going to have to do something a little different. What I'll do is I'll copy this. Actually, I'm going to join these. I'll select both doors and then the frame, Control J, and I'll just join them. I'm now going to actually snap that. This, because we're lucky enough that this has a center point here, I can snap this middle part of the door to that center point and manually move it up. Because once we can actually go in orthographic and move this up, because we're not relying on the angle anymore. We're just relying on a straight on level to get this door the same level on the bottom as this wall. So that probably sounded confusing. In my head it made sense, but it probably sounded confusing to say it. I'll just kind of show what I mean. I'm just going to isolate these two. I want to select this piece, select everything. So I want to also make sure that my active vertex is the front top one. So the frontmost, topmost vert. And with that, I'll just make sure snap is turned on, set the vertex, and I'll just hover over where I think the midpoint here is. Press G and it will snap that door too. Actually, that might be hard to do from that. So before I actually do that, I'm going to rotate this. I'll give it the 45-degree turn, because at the angle it might be easier to do this. So now with that, I can press G and snap that to the center point. And now I can go into my orthographic, the front orthographic. I'll turn off snap here, and I'll press G, and I'm just going to move that up. And I want it to line up flush with the bottom of the wall. Now it doesn't have to be too perfect, just to give us an idea. Now with that, I will change my orientation for the gizmo here into local, and I'll just pull it forward a bit. I just want to make sure I can see these two sides. So what I'm going to do here is select that edge and that edge, if it let me. 1, 2. Okay. Now I'll copy them. So Shift D to duplicate, P to separate. And now I'll just select those two edges, and I want to go into edit mode, select everything, and press F. And that'll give me a face down. And I'm going to turn that face into a cube. So I'll give it a solidify modifier. Make sure even thickness is turned on, and I'll just up the thickness. I want to go the opposite way, so I'll go into the minus value here. And now I'll just adjust that offset to bring it out, maybe halfway. The important point is that we're completely cutting through that wall. So with that, I will apply that, select the object. I need to bring the bottom face down. I want no clip in here, so I'll bring that right down. And we're going to cut that hole that we need out of the wall. Instead of using project, we're just going to use a Boolean modifier for this one. And for the people who aren't aware of really what a Boolean is, it's, imagine like, think of this cube as a cookie cutter, and this wall is the cookie dough. You want to cut that shape out of the wall. Well, you use a Boolean for that. So a Boolean can be used to subtract or add geometry to a piece. I find it to be a kind of a, it's a very temperamental modifier. It gives you really weird results sometimes, but sometimes you kind of strike lucky with it. So to think of it like this, we want to cut a hole in this wall. So you take the object you want a hole in, so I'll take the wall and I'll give that the modifier. So go to add modifier, Boolean. And now, where it says object, we just click that eyedrop tool, select the cube, and you can almost see straight away through the cube we've got that orange outline. It's kind of already giving you that illusion that there's a hole, that there's an arch now in that wall piece. So if I just apply that, remove the cube, press X and delete, we can now see that is cut into the wall perfectly. So we don't need to rely on the knife project in every circumstance. Sometimes Booleans are the way to go, especially on angles like this 45 degree where you can't get an orthographic view at it. You could probably try to line it up like this, but because it's in perspective, you're always going to cut in at an angle. It's never going to be a perfect square cut out of it. So in situations like that, Boolean is the way to go. So the Boolean worked, but in doing so, it actually modified our topology a bit. So we just need to make a quick fix to this. If I go into edit mode here, and I need to turn this into, basically you don't want anything with 5 edges or above in this case. So I can just quickly modify that. I'll select the top corner vert here and the very top corner here and press the J button, and that'll draw an edge between those. So I'll do that front and back on both sides here. And you can see even adding the edge in this way as well also keeps the UV intact, so we don't have any problems with our texture there as well. And this here we'll also need to join those. Just like that. So everything here has been quadded now. So I have that. Now I just need to bring this frame back. Now when I moved that, I actually left the pivot behind, so I'll need to reset this. I'll just right click for the moment, set origin to geometry. Now I need to set the origins for the doors because I want them to open inwards. Okay, so I'll first select everything. I can see I still have those seams there where I cut the UVs. I don't need them anymore, so I'll select everything. I'll press 2 to go into edge mode, right click, clear seam. There we go. So now when I go into this, I can select entire door by pressing L and separate that by selection, and I'll do the same with the other. So now we're back to having 3 individual pieces here. So for the door, we'll be wanting to put the pivot point on the bottom inside vertex here. So the quickest way to do that would be select it, go to edit mode, select vertex, and select the vert where you want the pivot point to be. So with that selected, go up to mesh, snap, and cursor to selected. And now we can just reset all transforms and right click, set origin to 3D cursor. And that will then let me open and close this door as the door should. We'll do the same for this one here. Now, there we go. So if I select both these, and with individual origins set on my pivot settings, okay, they act a little funny, but you can see they're doing what doors do. All right. So all we have to do now is fix up this frame. Now I want to move this around, but I don't want to have to reset the pivot points for these doors all the time. So what I'll do is I'll select both the doors. Now I'll select the door frame and I'll press Ctrl and P, and this will actually parent it. So when I set parent to object, so now these guys will move and rotate freely. But when I select the frame and move that, it'll bring the doors with them. So I can now grab this frame, go into edit mode. I want to select everything and make sure that the top corner is my active vertex, and I'll turn on vertex snap and just snap that back to the wall. Now that didn't bring the doors with me because they're not active, so I have to select everything here. Try that again. Let's have a look at this side. So there's a bit more to come out here. So I can go into selecting these faces, convert them to vertices. I'll make this top corner my active vert and snap that back. And there we go. Now we have a main entrance for whatever building we're making. So I think that kind of went on long enough for this one. In the next, what I'll do is I can finally go back to using knife project and doing things easy, and I'm going to cut a rounded window into some of these faces here. I'll give that place a window and that one there. And then if you've time allowed as well, I'll actually make some steps. So like I can elevate this doorway up. So like maybe give it a bit of height, and then we'll have steps coming up into whatever building this is. But yeah, for this video I'll call it at that, and we'll pick up where we're leaving off here in the next. So I'll see you there.